Hello, welcome to Lunch with Lee, where we're trying to answer homeowner issues as far as fireplaces, chimneys, dryer vents occasionally, but we're trying to answer basic questions in very basic terms so that everybody can understand. And I don't care if you're a chimney expert or a homeowner, it can be explained in very simple terms. And that is at least my goal, is to help people understand their fireplace, how it works, and how we could make it as simple as possible so that everybody makes educated decisions and everybody wins. So today's topic, last week we went over ventless logs, which is extraordinarily detailed. If you listen to it, it was probably a little too detailed for my liking. And today we're talking about vented logs. What is the difference between vent-free or ventless and vented logs? And it's very simple. Is vented logs are vented to the outside. They have a pipe, whether it's a masonry or whether it's brick or it's metal, it vents to the outside. All the products of combustion or the smoke, the sparks, the carbon monoxide, all that kind of stuff goes to the outside. And it allows some of that heat to then vent to the outside. That's why it rises. It goes to the outside. So vented logs are, you heard me talk about last week about how the ventless logs are not nearly as attractive as vented logs. So the vented logs are going to have a much dirtier flame, which means it's not as blue. It's going to be more yellow and red and look more realistic, but it's also a dirtier flame. I mean, they have engineers that are designed them to not burn totally efficient. So they don't want it to be horribly inefficient, but they also don't want it to be totally blue flames. So it vents to the outside. So it's going to put off soot just like wood. It's going to put off a lot of different things. In fact, the soot actually is a little, if you're in our industry, you're going to find it's very, very black. It's kind of greasy. And it's got a little more sulfur in it than wood soot, which means it actually, if it gets on your skin, it'll start to tingle. But it's very corrosive. So that's why you don't want to leave it there. And we want to make sure it gets to the outside. But vented logs means the damper has to be open. And as you burn the gas, it has to vent to the outside. So all that stuff doesn't come back into your house. Which brings us to the very first point, which is before you install any gas logs, whether vented, vent-free, whatever, you need to have the fireplace inspected. You need to make sure it's built correctly, and you need to make sure it's venting to the outside. In our world, that's called a level 2 inspection. But for homeowners' world, it's a very detailed inspection. Usually it involves a camera system that's put inside to make sure there's no cracks, no holes, nothing weird is going on. So everything that's burnt from the inside, all that soot, sparks, it all goes to the outside. That's a fancy way of, a level 2 inspection is a fancy way of saying inspect everything that you can get your hands on without taking stuff apart with special equipment that goes inside, so we can make sure it all vents to the outside. That's basically what a level 2 inspection is. But anytime you put in gas logs, you need to inspect the fireplace. You'll hear from a lot of different people that a gas log set is what you install when your fireplace is not built correctly, but gas logs do not fix anything at all. So as a homeowner, if you hear that, your little antenna should go up, spidey senses should go off, there's something not right. Because a vented gas log set needs to vent to the outside. It does not fix problems. Sometimes it even disguises problems some. If your chimney's not venting correctly, it could be venting into the room. And with wood, you're going to get more smoke. You're going to know instantaneously something's wrong. You've heard me say, if you smell wood smoke inside your house, anytime you're using it, there's something wrong. It should all vent to the outside. But also with gas, it could be venting into your room and you're less likely to know it. Now, a lot of people have eyes that burn. Just something says it's off. But before you install vented gas logs, make sure that everything is correct and your fireplace is venting correctly. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I find is people just put them in and it's just gas, right? So we'll put them in, we'll burn it. With vented gas logs, you also have the option of doing remote controls. There's all kinds of cool remote controls that do variable flame heights. They'll cycle the fire on and off depending on the temperature in the room. There's all kinds of stuff. Now, anytime you go with remote controls, understand you're putting electronics in a hot environment. You also have batteries. There's all kinds. You put more variables into the equation that can actually go wrong. Now, it's extraordinarily convenient. I have customers that won't live without it. I have people who are now old enough where they don't get up and down easily and they can't manually light the fireplace, because if you don't have the match lit gas logs, which are vented, are some that you actually have to manually light. You light a match, you light a lighter, you put the flame first, and this is very important, flame first, and then you turn on the gas second. That's extraordinarily, because if you do gas first and flame second and you're a little slow on the take, it gets exciting. And you want to keep this as boring as possible, because it's going to light and create like a little mini explosion depending on how long you've waited to light it. And you want this to be as boring as possible. You want gas first, not gas first, fire first, and then you slowly turn on the gas until it lights a little, and then you can turn it up to have more flame. So that's manually lit. The nice thing about the remote control systems is I can be all the way across the other side of the room, click a button, it'll either have a pilot that will light it, or you will start to hear tick, 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 tick as it lights the pilot, and then the main burner will turn on. So that's a couple different types of remote control systems. There's all kinds of types, and you have to make sure they're maintained correctly. The batteries all work. We get more recalls for remote controls than you do match lit systems. There's not a whole lot that can go wrong. It's basically a pipe with some holes. It's a little more complex than that, and you light it and then it lights. So it's very, very simple, and it's less likely to have issues going on with it. So that's a couple different types of vented gas log systems. There's a bunch of manufacturers. Some of them are cheaper, some of them are more expensive, some of them have longer warranties. Some of the ones we sell have lifetime warranties on the logs. Like Home Depot, Lowe's sets are going to be much cheaper, but they're also the logs are not as quality. Also, be very, very careful mixing and matching gas log sets, because you want the burner and the log grate to match the logs so that everything works correctly together. Don't just buy willy-nilly stuff online, or you have an old burner and an old grate and you're just going to throw some new logs on it. Be very, very careful with that, because you're putting stuff together that's not designed to go together. Sometimes it can work, sometimes it can't. But I've seen more bad stuff come from that than good. So always make sure that you have everything matching up, from burner to grate to logs, and they all need to match up, especially when you get to remote controls, because stuff can overheat. So that's a little bit about vented gas logs. You still need to clean chimneys with vented gas logs. Quite often, especially in our market where it's a little warmer, people will use vented logs a lot, because you can turn it on for 15 minutes and then turn it off and then go out to eat. Whereas when you burn wood, it's a commitment. Once you light it, you have to babysit it. You can't just turn it off. Well, with gas logs, that's the huge benefit is I'm ready to go to bed, off, bed. So it's very, very important that we know what kind of logs we have, that they're vented, vent-free, that we're lighting them correctly, whether it's with gas log, with a match or a lighter, or you have a remote control system that automatically lights it. But know exactly how it's done. And if you have any questions, call us. We can educate you, whether it's a virtual kind of appointment or it's us coming out. The one thing we really can't do virtually is, before you install any set, make sure your fireplace and your chimney are working correctly and they're installed correctly, and everything's going to work out. Because even with gas logs, bad stuff can happen. It is fire. So today, that is vented gas logs. If you have any questions, and I've had some people in the notes say that they're going to watch this. If you're watching it afterwards, which most people do, please shoot me questions. It's lee@lordschimney.com is my email address. You can send it info@lordschimney.com. That's also to the main office. But let us know if you have questions. I'd be happy to answer them. I can even run it back on our next live next Monday, and we can make sure we get all your